Welcome to How They Do It, a series on everyday entrepreneurs. My name is Michelle Martin, and I'm going to be your host for this series. What we want to do in the How They Do It interviews is talk to people who are making a career out of being an entrepreneur. That can happen in all kinds of ways, and we want to explore the different strategies that people use to make money and do good in the world based on their passions and their interests. Today's guest is Melissa Rowe, who is an educator, writer, and innovator, and someone who is constantly looking for ways to craft a career from various entrepreneurial projects and ideas. So welcome, Melissa. It's nice to have you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great being here with you.
So what we wanted to talk about is everyday entrepreneurs, how people are kind of making it happen. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about is what got you started thinking about working for yourself? I know you're someone who has had jobs in the past, like most of us. What made you start thinking that you wanted to work for yourself?
Well, I was really kind of forced into working for myself in some way. I'm an educator in Philly, and I've been in education for over 10 years. But in the past 2 years, I faced 2 layoffs. That hurt me because the students I worked with, they really needed my help. And so my thought was, how do I make sure the young people get what they need, regardless of funding or administration?
Right.
So that's how I started. That's how I started my writing coaching and my website and my blog to make sure that parents, students, and educators could get the information they needed, a lot of it for free.
So that really, I think, is what happens with a lot of people where they may not have been thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up. But in fact, they get forced into that because of layoffs and that kind of thing. So it sounds like instead of you saying, okay, well, I'm going to just, keep looking for a job, not that you're not doing that, but you really started thinking, well, this may be a business opportunity here because there are things that I want to do, and I need to figure out how to keep those things happening without it being tied to a job.
Exactly. And also I thought about, in education, there were multiple people, right? Like thousands of people laid off in Philadelphia. And so I really wanted people to know that I'm serious about this. If I do apply for a job part-time or even as a contractor, I want you to know that this is something that I live. And so for me, taking myself seriously meant developing a web presence, writing about it seriously, building an audience so that people knew, oh, Melissa isn't just looking for a job, this is really her work.
So this is what Melissa stands for, and then there may be various ways that you earn a living from that.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and that's a big thing that we talk with people a lot about is the idea of thinking about multiple income streams. How do you, develop multiple income streams? Some of that can be project-based where you're, doing different kinds of projects. Some of it's about having different products and services. Can you talk a little bit about what you see as being some of the different income streams that you're developing, some different ways of turning your passion into various, business opportunities?
Certainly. So one of the things that's really dear to my heart is actually the contract work that I do with young people. So I help them find and write for scholarships. And so schools or organizations will pay me to come out and to deliver workshops and to coach their students. So that's one stream of income. But because my skill is also writing, I also have clients who I'll write web copy for, marketing materials for them, or even do editing projects. So I have a client in particular who produces a lot of writing herself, and I edit all of her projects. So that helps me there. And when I think about other streams of income for my business, right now I'm building out a book. And so I'll actually have a tangible product that people can buy from me online, as well as developing online workshops that people can buy and, get the information and really improve their own skills at their own leisure. So those are some of the ways my business will bring in income.
So it sounds like you're looking at having a combination of selling your services, which essentially becomes selling your time, and then also having products that people can buy, which once you put the time into developing it, that's what would be called passive income. So then they can just buy, an ebook or an online course or that kind of thing. So it sounds like you're trying to do kind of a combination of both.
Yes, it's because time is limited, Michelle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I won't have the time to always coach people or to be editing projects.
Mm-hmm.
But as an educator, I want for young people or older people, I want people to actually have the information they need.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to deliver those projects or products passively is really a great model for me and for my client.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I met you actually because we were both at a networking event, and then we ended up working on a project together. But one of the things that I think is really important for entrepreneurs is that you're putting yourself out there, connecting with people who kind of share your values and vision and that kind of thing, because new projects can sort of emerge and evolve from that. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about networking? How do you decide, what groups you want to go to? How do you find out about them? Because I think that's really an important aspect of being an entrepreneur.
Oh, that's so good, Michelle. And I'm so happy we ended up in the same place,
Me
right?
too.
So, how do I go about networking? For me, it's really intuition, but also knowing that. So I was the girl who always wanted a big sister, right? So I
Right.
look for spaces where I'm like, where are there other really awesome women? And so in education, right, there are a lot of really awesome women, and I know that we have something in common. And so I look for spaces where, or even like millennial groups, I just look for spaces and places where I feel like people are doing good work that needs to be done in the world. So I know I can connect with them there. And then I show up to see how I can help, how I could just be a part of the community, or how we might even collaborate. And so that's kind of my criteria. Is this something I might want to be in? Are there some things that I think it's really good coming out of this? Do I want to continue? And that's how I, kind of form my greater circle.
Yeah, and I think you're really good. You have all these great circles going on, and then you do a great job of connecting people between circles. So, as an example, when we were working on our art project together, you were connecting me to other people that you knew who could help us promote it and everything else. And I think that's another great thing that entrepreneurs can do, is connect people who wouldn't otherwise be connected, because then you don't know what evolves from, those new connections that you create.
Right. And, that's part of my philosophy. So I live based off of the idea of creativity, freedom, and laughter. So I only...
I always laugh when I'm with you, so that...
Right. And I should add cupcakes. I should add cupcakes.
Yes, cupcakes, food.
But
food makes everything better.
It always does, right? So
right.
I make sure that I keep people in my personal and professional life that brings a lot of joy, insight, and creativity to whatever it is they're doing, so that when I'm mixing and matching people from different circles, we're all benefiting in some way. So that's the easiest way for me to keep my life streamlined.
Right. So tell us what a typical day might be like for you. Are there typical days?
I used to watch interviews of entrepreneurs. I still do. And when this question came up, I would think they're lying when they say, there's no typical day. Working for myself, I realized there is no typical day.
Right.
Especially because, a lot of times people don't understand that when you're working for yourself, you're working. You might see me in Starbucks, but I am working. I am writing. I am thinking. Because I am a writer, though, some days a lot of days I'm writing. I'm either creating something or writing something. And that can be from home. That could be, joining up with you at a local coffee shop, or that could be anywhere. But there are always days that I'm writing, thinking, and creating. There are days when I'm doing. So people will not be able to get in touch with me because I'm facilitating the workshop. I'm doing my coaching. Or I'm working on someone else's project and that has to be done. Because I know the times of day that really work for me, it's where I work really well early in the morning. I mean, like I'm up around 5. And I work really well late at night. So after 9 o'clock, when things really quiet down, I can go from 9 to about 1. So I nap for about 4 hours. Yeah. And then I get back up and do it again. And so people, I also nap during the day because I don't sleep long at night. And so I think a lot of people think that being an entrepreneur is really sweet because they're like, oh, it's 2 p.m., Melissa's sleeping. But that's only because I didn't get a full night's rest.
Well, that's a really good point. I think that one of the freedoms that you have as an entrepreneur in a lot of cases, depending on the work that you're doing, is being able to work with your energy and say, I know that I do my best work at certain times of day, and so I'm going to schedule the kinds of work that I do well at those times, rather than having to be driven by when you're supposed to do it for a job or whatever. So I'm like you, where getting up at 5:30 in the morning and starting to work, I get a great chunk of work done in that early time period, and I think that is a benefit for a lot of people in working for themselves. What do you think are some of the other benefits that you've seen in terms of working for yourself and having your own business going on?
Benefits for me is that I can actually, when I see that there is something in demand, I can produce it. And so that's actually happening now for me. I'm shifting a little bit. The work that I've developed for youth will become its own separate arm. But I'm rebranding so that adults know, hey, Melissa can really help me with my projects here. And so at work, when you kind of get a job description, you have to really kind of be at the mercy of supervisors and say, hey, can I do this? And I've definitely done those creative projects, within the realm of 9 to 5. But a lot of times you have a job or a position that's really there to execute a certain amount of things, and that's where they want to keep you. So being an entrepreneur means that if I come across a woman who's as awesome as you are, right, I can say, oh, Michelle, that sounds so great. Like, what if you did this?
Right.
And you could be crazy enough to say, oh, let's explore it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the beautiful part. I never know what my newest projects are going to be.
Right.
But they don't have to just fit in a box.
Well, and don't you think once you start thinking that way, everywhere you turn, you start going, ooh, this could be a product line, this could be a service line, this could be some kind of, business. And you don't necessarily think that way when you are working for someone else or you have a job. But once you start working for yourself, you're really, to me, it always feels like you're constantly thinking, ooh, this could be, a customer told me this. What if that became a product? A customer seems to be having a problem with this. What if that became a service?
Yes, and that's absolutely the truth. And it's, it's not just what the customers say, but it's also when you meet other people who are doing similar work, it's like, that is really interesting. I never thought about, doing this for young people or so really getting a lot of feedback. So being an entrepreneur has a lot to do with feedback. What are they telling you, your peers, your colleagues, your clients? What are they saying to you? Can you fulfill that need? But for me, it also helps me stay in my lane. So it's like, people say, hey, Melissa, can you do such and such? Do you want to? I just had a request on Facebook to do a person's resume. And I say, you know, while I do help people with their resume writing, it's usually within the context of education or nonprofit, and she's a nurse. And I said, you want someone in your field to really help you with that. So being able to say, this is what I can do excellently versus, oh, let me just try my hand at it, right? Because you don't want to waste people's time. So
yeah, that's that. Yeah. So just knowing what is your talent, what are your strengths, and saying yes to those things that play to your strengths. But then as an entrepreneur, you also have to preserve your time, you know, because you could run off in 50 million directions, chasing money, chasing ideas, and everything else. And so having to constantly go back to that strategy of what, you know, where am I doing my best work and where do I feel like there's the best intersection in the market, I think that becomes, you know, a constant question that you have to ask yourself.
Yes, yes. And as an entrepreneur, we know markets change.
Right.
So
right.
Coming from an education environment, I know, hey, this is what students will need, right? This is the curriculum. As an entrepreneur, there is something, you know, if a new piece of social media, a new platform pops up, then people need to be educated on how to use it for business, how to use it for education, how to use it. So I think that that's one of the things. Our landscape is always evolving. The things that people wanted 2 years ago aren't necessarily what people are looking for or need this year.
Right. And then that also means you end up having to really develop yourself on an ongoing basis too, like developing new skills, always kind of looking ahead to see, well, where are the changes, where are things coming, you know, that might impact the work that I'm doing, and how can I, you know, adapt that and build my skills and all of that. It's really easy, I think, to get stale in a job, but you do not last very long as an entrepreneur if you're not constantly developing yourself. And at least that's been my experience.
Yeah, mine as well. And, you know, I'm lucky that I've always been a natural learner. So, you know, I have tons of books behind me. It's like 3 bookshelves back here you can't see. But I'm always reading for myself. And then I think, and that's the other thing about being an entrepreneur, it's hard to just do work for pleasure. So you gotta make sure if you're working for yourself, you love what you do. Right. Because whenever I read something or learn something new, this question pops up: How could this help my clients? You know. And sometimes I say, you know what, Melissa, they don't really want to know the best way to do Sudoku or whatever. Right.
Right.
So I can keep that for myself. But there are other times when I'm like, oh, this information is really valuable, and I might put it in a blog post. So just that balance. But yeah, you definitely have to develop yourself every day. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to the end of our time together. What would be the advice that you would give to someone who might be thinking about working for themselves? What do you feel is like your best advice? Maybe the best advice you've received from someone.
Well, I'll tell you this from when I was growing up. I grew up with grandparents who were functionally literate. But who ran their own businesses. And so I realized the value in being able to bring in money, right? So my grandfather couldn't read me the Berenstein's book, but I learned how to count money.
That he knew, right?
Right? So that's serious. So if you're thinking about becoming my first real piece of advice is, I don't think we live in a world where we can no longer think about becoming an entrepreneur. I think that it's necessary to really develop multiple streams of income and to find ways other than relying on just one job or one position to be able to take care of your livelihood. So I want to say, don't think about if you should become an entrepreneur. Think about the ways in which you can become an entrepreneur. So for me, some of my work actually started, I converted what I was doing in my full-time work, right, and some of the things that I had developed. And that becomes an offering now for my contract work. Mm-hmm. So wherever you are, and I push young people to do this as well, you better think about some of the things that people thank you for, things people ask you to do, whether that's baking. If that's doing hair, when I was young, I could put in a mean weave, right? Mm-hmm. So figuring out the things you're really good at and people will pay you to do, and then start getting some paying clients. So it could be on the weekends, it could be after work. If you're a fitness, enthusiast, get 5 of your girlfriends together and show that your methods work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So figure out how you can get those things going for you.
Fantastic. I couldn't have said it better myself, Melissa. Thank you. So this has been the How They Do It series. We're talking to everyday entrepreneurs. Today's guest was Melissa Rowe, and I want to thank you, Melissa, for sharing all your great insight and ideas, and for really helping us understand what it's like to be an everyday entrepreneur.
Thank you, Michelle. And I just want to say, if people want to find me, they can find me at melissaarowe.com.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Melissa.
Have a good one.